Recorded.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
Okay, take it away. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone. This is Jen Grove from the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, and I know Mo and I are really happy to be here with you today. We're excited to continue the conversation that we started last January, and I wasn't able to join you for the webinar. I think it was in the spring or early summer that Mo did a webinar for you, but I'm happy to be back for this webinar around measuring impact. And just a little bit of background about me. I'm the prevention director here at the NSCRC. I've been here for about 12 years, and prior to that, I spent 7 years working at the local level, doing prevention and advocacy and counseling work at rape crisis and domestic violence centers in Pennsylvania. And so I love being able to do training and technical assistance with local level folks, people who are doing this really great prevention work on the ground. One of my passions is evaluation and talking about how to measure impact, so I'm really excited about today's topic. So I'll turn it over to Mo.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. So I'm Mo Lewis. I'm the prevention specialist at NSVRC, and we're going to have a chance to do some introductions all together in just a few minutes, maybe even less than a few minutes. I just want to go over really quick what we're going to be covering today. And I need to move the slide, but I thought I had controls, but I don't think I do. So if someone could move the slide ahead, that would be awesome.
Jesse, I don't have control either, so I don't know if you can.
Jesse, we need control.
Hello? Are you there? Uh-oh.
I'm here.
Did we lose?
I don't know. I don't hear Jessie. Oh, I see her.
I'm here. I was muted. I'm putting you back on.
Oh,
I just sent you
Jen says, Jessie, we need control. Forward our slides. So obviously this is going to be another casual webinar presentation by Jen and Mo, who like to keep it real casual. Now
where do you need to be? Objective?
Yeah, I don't know why I'm not.
Okay, try to take control now. I gave it back to you again.
No, we don't have any arrows.
Yeah, I don't see the arrow.
Yeah, I see like an arrow in the middle of the slide, but that's it.
Okay, you go and I'll try to fix it, and in the meantime, you let me know and I'll advance your slide.
Okay, advance.
Okay, so now, yeah.
Just the objectives so we can talk about those. And also, I think we have copies of these slides too if you all end up wanting them. And I know Jessie said that she put the handouts on the hub for you, but there is an opportunity later in this webinar to do some work with one of the handouts. And if you end up needing that, I can also email it to you. So I would love it if we could go to the next slide that says objectives. That would be cool.
So oddly, I have been moving around the slides and they're clearly not moving for you. So let's try that.
Huh. Oh, there we go. I can see it now.
Okay.
And it looks like I have control as well.
Okay. Okay,
here we go.
There you go. I'll start.
So here are the objectives. These are the things that we were talking about with Jessie and really thinking about measuring impact and wanting to have a chance to talk with each other about and have some opportunities to do some thinking and practicing. So really, we want to make sure that there are some opportunities to share information about your RPE program and also be able to learn from your peers about their programs and similar strategies. So we're going to be incorporating some time to talk in the webinar, to talk with each other. We also want to have some opportunities to identify how you can measure the impact in your prevention program. So we'll be going through some materials that might look familiar to you if you were at the in-person training. These are things that we talked about just a little tiny bit, but now we'll have an opportunity to delve into those more. And then also we're hoping that by the end of this, you'll be able to identify at least one way you can measure impact in your target community. So hopefully by the end of this, you'll go, oh, okay, I can incorporate this at least one way of measuring that impact and just starting right away. So those are our objectives. Hopefully we will get to that. It says I have controls and I can't move it now. Jessie, this is so weird. Oh, whoa, maybe I did move it. Okay. So here's introductions. These are October themed introductions. So maybe we could just disregard the candy corn. I feel like we've moved more into like peppermint bark territory. But what I'd love to do is have an opportunity for all of us to do some introductions with each other. So Jen, you already introduced yourself. I introduced myself pretty much too. But I'm wondering if we could just take some time for the rest of you to say your name, also remind us of what organization you're at, and then let us know any updates about your work. So I'm really curious, and I know Jen is too, about what has changed since we last talked and since we met. So either if it was, the last webinar we did like a couple months ago, or if it was over in the spring when you hung out with me on the webinar, or last year or earlier this year with Jen and I. So is there anybody who would like to start? You can unmute yourself on the phone and tell us your info.
And it looks like we have some folks on like the web audio, so I'm wondering if those folks who are on the web would want to type in any information you want to share as well.
If there's a volunteer who wants to start, that would be awesome. Otherwise, we could just pick on someone, which is always a good possibility. Oh, Joyce did it. Pardon me.
This is Nicole.
Joyce. So I'll just read your info here. This is Joyce. The colleague next to you is on the crisis line. Oh, so you're going to go on mute. That makes sense.
I think someone else was chiming in. Was that Nicole?
Yeah. So my name is Nicole Lightfoot. I'm with One Safe Place in Redding, California. This is actually the first webinar I've attended because my previous coworker, Emily Westfall, used to attend them, and so I'm not sure what she said last time, so I don't know what the updates are. But yeah, so just I work out in the high schools, and we do a No More Club out there, and we're just started doing our mapping of the campus and the community for kind of safety and bystander intervention. So I guess I'll just say that.
Cool. Awesome, thank you. I really appreciate that. And it looks like Joyce also did a little more chatting, so I'll just go back to you. So yeah, Joyce works for Verity, the Rape Crisis Center in Sonoma County, and she's fairly new, started in September. That's really exciting for us. So yeah, I guess we'll be meeting you. If you're going to be at the next one in January, we'll meet you then. And we have April, who chimed in over chat too, from One Safe Place in Redding also. Nice. Okay, so Emily left, and now you're here with Nicole. This is great. I'm really excited that we're all going to be able to meet in person. That'll be fun. Sabrina, are you able to share any information in the chat with us? Maybe a quick introduction, remind us of where you work, if there are any updates since last time we talked?
Hello?
Hello.
Hey, can you hear me? Hi.
Yeah.
So my name is Sabrina. I work for community service programs in Orange County. And I actually just started in July, so this is also my first webinar. So I do not have any updates as well.
Okay, cool. Well, this will be good. You'll get a little bit of a taste of how Jen and I do things. pretty casual
Awesome.
so far, but also hoping to, always keep us moving forward in terms of thinking about doing prevention work, incorporating some cool stuff about prevention theory, really looking at where we're at in terms of the social ecological model, the 9 principles, and at this point, really looking at measuring impact as a portion of evaluation. So thank you all for helping with those introductions. Let me look and see. Oh, so this is also a little bit old. I don't know if you have any updates to this, Jesse, but this is just a calendar that shows what is coming up. It looks like you all had a training and networking meeting last month, and then next month you will be hanging out in person with Jen and myself, January 10th and 11th. Was there anything to add to this, Jesse, in terms of what's coming up? Okay.
No, that's perfect. You got it.
Great. So now I'm going to hand it over to Jen, and we're going to talk a little bit more about measuring impact and why that's important and what it even looks like.
Great, thanks, Mo. And yeah, I'm super excited to meet so many new people in January. It's going to be fun. I think like the last training that we did in January, besides me getting stuck in the snow in Atlanta trying to get home, it was just such a great meeting, a great time to come together and strategize and learn from one another. And Mo and I got to share some information that we know, but I think we came back from that training with a lot more information from all of you, and we learned a lot as well. So I look forward to that again. So we're going to talk just briefly about measuring your impact and why, focusing right now on why it's important. There are many reasons why it's important to measure your impact. And the first one being, it's necessary for funding. It's really necessary for funders to see the ways in which the program that you're doing is working, and that it's good to have data about the program if you're looking to access new funding. So you want to keep the funding you have, or you want to access new funding, you've got to show that your program is having an impact. Okay, and then it tells you if your program is working and how well it works. So this shows that you care about the program and the participants, and you really want it to be the best that it can be. And in measuring the impact, you can find out what works, you can find out the things that don't work so well, and you can pinpoint where changes need to be made. And then it helps with communicating your work effectively. It helps keep stakeholders engaged. Telling the story with some data, but also the impact is really important. And data is essential. Testimonials work to support the data. And these are all elements that make up a story. So participants need to hear the story too. And so it's really important to be engaging your stakeholders and your participants and letting them know the impact, the impact of the program along the way as well. Okay, I'm going to try to, I just did that. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is one of the handouts. So you should have received access to several handouts. This is what I call this the Townsend chart. This is from one of our consultants, Dr. Stephanie Townsend, who is an awesome evaluator to work with. And so what does this look like? What does measuring your impact look like in practice? This information is also located on the Mix and Match evaluation handout, but there are various types of, whoops, I think we're getting a pop-up. Oh, good. There are various types of ways you can measure your impact. You can do needs assessments, and those are like interviews and focus groups and surveys and looking at existing data and doing observation. You're looking at program theory through interviews and document review and logic models. There's routine data collection, there's satisfaction surveys, there's fidelity checks, there's activity-based evaluation. You can measure the program impact with pre- and post-test surveys and community-based surveys. And there's just so many ways that you can be measuring your impact. It's almost overwhelming. Actually, it is pretty overwhelming. This is another handout that you should have access to. This is what I call the Siebold chart. This is from Wendy Siebold, who is another fantastic evaluation expert who I believe is based in Washington State. And this is the data collection methods handout. We're gonna, I'm not gonna go over this as much because we're gonna delve a little deeper with the next few slides into a few more the more commonly used methods. And we're just gonna do a little bit of a deeper dive here. So the first one is surveys. Sorry, my controls keep disappearing, so, oh, there we go. I'm just going to use my arrows on my keyboard and hope it works. So this is surveys and questionnaires. You can, surveys are great. I mean, a lot of people use surveys. I'm sure probably most of you are using surveys as well. You can do surveys on paper. You can do surveys online, like SurveyMonkey. We use that a lot. It's easy to use. I like it that it analyzes the data for you and creates a report if that's what you need, which most people, if they're collecting data, they're going to want a report of that data. There's also a way you can do surveys and questionnaires using cell phones. Like, I don't know if any of you have used Poll Anywhere, and there's a few other programs that you can do using cell phones to capture some data in a survey or questionnaire form. With the pre-post surveys, one of the things to think about is that you have, you're going to need an identifier unless you do a pre-post on one survey. We have an in-person training survey. So when you come to the training in January, you're going to see what a pre-post survey is. And we actually call this a retroactive pre-post. And it basically has the pre and the post test on one form. So basically it'll say, before the training, how well could you explain or identify or whatever, and it gives a list. And then we ask the same questions about, now that you've been through the training, how well can you identify or explain or whatever the questions are and make them identical. And so sometimes you don't need to use an identifier so you can match up the test if you do a pre-post on one form. And so with surveys and questionnaires, these are nice because they're inexpensive for the most part. SurveyMonkey's free unless we do pay a subscription on ours because we do a lot more sophisticated analyzing with our data. But most of them are free. Surveys and questions are also anonymous, so sometimes it really gives folks the freedom to say what they want to say. You usually get a lot of data. And for the most part, with a survey, it's easy to analyze. Unless, I'll have to say, unless you're including a lot of open-ended questions, and then you have to think about all the fun you get to do when you get the surveys back and you have to code all the data and figure out what people are saying and find common themes. So there is something to think about with that. Some of the downside of surveys are that they're impersonal and they don't always get the full story, obviously, because sometimes you're just asking yes or no or A, B, C, D. You don't always get the full story. And creating a survey with good question wording or adapting existing surveys does take time. So those are all some things to think about with questionnaires. The next thing we're going to talk about is interviews. I really like interviews, if you can do them. These are great when you want to really fully understand a person's experience with the program. It takes time to create questions. It takes time to schedule interviews. It takes time to train interviewers. A lot of folks think that, well, I could just go in and I have this list of questions and I'll just ask this and write down the notes and then I'll be done. But honestly, there is a training element to it so that you, depending on what you're asking, you want someone who has empathy, you want someone who's a good listener, someone who can give good feedback if necessary. There is a training element for interviewers, so how to interview, how to record notes. And then there's the process similar to open-ended questions on a survey where you need to look at all of the things that the notes that you're writing and figure out how to code the responses, and then how to find common themes, how to analyze the data. So again, you get this full range, you get this depth of information, you get to develop this relationship with the people you're interviewing, but again, and you get this really rich data, but it does take time and training to be able to do that. This is one of my favorite ones that not a lot of folks we're finding that a lot of folks use a lot more than when I first started this work years ago. But observation, I really like observation evaluation. This is where you get to view the strategy as it occurs, and you can helps you capture data about the process. And it also lets you see behaviors. It can be difficult to interpret, however. So if you're doing a program, or it's nice that if you have like a partner in the prevention work that you're doing, so as you're conducting the program, you can be having someone observe it. If you're doing a program and you have an activity, that say you're in a school system and there's an activity that the students have to do, you can be giving them the instructions and then observing the way in which, whether it's a role play, are they exhibiting the appropriate behaviors. There's a lot of interesting ways you can do observation evaluation and capture data about the process and the behaviors that you see. So again, it can be difficult to interpret behaviors, and also if folks know that they're being watched, it can obviously influence the behaviors that they're exhibiting. So that's one thing. We did observational evaluation of our prevention track workshops at the national conference this year, and it was very interesting. We kind of had a checklist. We let them know it was happening. We let them know we would have a staff person in there as they were doing their training, and we did observational evaluation. It was really interesting and good for us to go down the checklist and see, are they covering the things, the objectives that they listed? Are they covering the things that we asked them to? And then, what we came away with then was a lot of information that we could use to determine whether we really hit the mark with our workshops this year, or if we missed the mark in some way, and how we might be able to do better next year, and provide some good feedback to the folks who were doing the training. And similar, there's a focus group too, sorry. Missed that one almost. I like focus groups because you can get really deep with group discussion when you use focus groups. You get a lot of range and depth of information in a short time. It can be a quick and reliable way to get some common impressions. However, it can be hard to analyze responses. And one of the most important things is you need a good facilitator for this. A lot of times when we've done focus groups, we've done a few on our own, but sometimes we will assist. We will hire someone to help us do a focus group, and we'll assist them. But really, it is a skill to do a focus group, depending on how many people are in the focus group. Smaller the better. We usually try to have no more than 8 people in a focus group, 8 to 10, depending on what we're doing. So it is this great way to get some good information in a short time, but one of the biggest things is the scheduling part of it. It's really difficult to schedule an ideal number of people together. So those are some things to think about, and again, the need for a good facilitator for that. And then activity-based evaluation, similar to some of the things I was sharing about observational evaluation. With activity-based evaluation, this can build evaluation into prevention programming, so you get to immediately see the impact of the program. And one of the other things you can do is engage participants as data collectors. So, for instance, as I was talking about before with activity-based evaluation, if you're doing a prevention program and you have an activity, and you're looking for certain behaviors, you might have a chart of the different behaviors or answers or responses that you're looking for. And as the students are doing the activity, it's really hard to conduct the activity as well as record and observe and do this activity-based evaluation. So this works really well. You can have a teacher help you, or this last bullet point, you can engage participants as data collectors. So there might be a student in the class who is really interested and like really responsible and really interested in the work that you're doing, and you can have them act as a data collector and mark off a checklist that you might have. It could be like the checklist, of X amount of people chose this side of the room when we asked them a yes or no question. Go to this side if it's yes, go to that side if it's no. You would have the person recording either a checklist or a number of who chose who chose no and who chose yes. Or you could have them a checklist around like X amount exhibited the desired behavior when doing a role play. So this works really well. You can do activity-based evaluation. A lot of people do role plays and look for, again, those behaviors they're looking for and mark them off on a checklist. This works with journaling. So it could be an activity around journaling, and then they're either sharing their journaling or you're reading the journaling, so you can sort of see if they're grasping the information that you're trying to impart. It could be through worksheets, it could be through guided discussions. So there's a lot of ways you can incorporate activity-based evaluation in this. And there's a resource. I think we have a resource sheet in with its information. If not, we can get that to you, but there's a really great guide from the Texas Association Against Sexual Assault that talks about activity-based evaluation and how to do that. So now we just want to hear from you about the type of data collection that you're using most frequently. And does anyone want to share? You can either unmute your phone, you can put a message in the text chat, whether you're using questionnaires or surveys or checklists or interviews or observations or focus groups, activity-based. Are there other things that you're using to collect data on your program?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So this is Diana and Araceli. We're from Peace Over Violence, and yeah, for us, it's mostly in the classrooms we're using the pre and post. We print out the surveys and we have them fill them out in the classrooms, and then we take data. Yeah, we take that data and we input it into SurveyMonkey, and that's how we're able to see our graphs and document all of that data. And we also, with the parents as well, we do focus groups, and we do when we have our close to home kitchen table conversations, we are documenting those conversations as well.
That's fantastic. You know, all of these things, I love that you're doing kitchen table conversations. And all of these things that we talked about, you can be adapting them to different environments. You can be adapting them to different cultures. I love to hear about things that are sort of outside the box. So it sounds like you're using several different methods, which is great. How do you like the information, like when you put it into SurveyMonkey, do you feel like you're able to get good information out of what you're putting into SurveyMonkey?
Yeah, we've been able to get good, and really, like, personally for me, like, just being able to see the charts visually, like that helps out a lot. I feel like it's just in the classroom we do a lot of time for the youth to be able to complete them, because sometimes what will happen is that they might skip a few questions because there's not enough time. So just being able to give them the time that they need in order to complete the surveys, and so that we can get the best results and be able to document the changes from the beginning and what they've taken from the training at the end.
Right. That's great. I think that's very important, and it's something that a lot of people don't have or they run out of, is that time for the evaluation piece, because time is so limited with many, especially school-based programs. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely.
So it looks like we have, I'm just going to chime in with a couple of the text chats here. We've got Sabrina, and Sabrina, you're stating that you use pre and post evaluations. Oh, you're also doing activity-based. That's great. And then you want to start doing more of observation-based data collecting. You've been paying attention but have not been writing down what happens in class, and then you want to do that to keep a more thorough document of what discussions and comments are being made by students. Exactly. And again, I don't know if you have any help with your programming, or I know some people have the teachers help them out by jotting down observations as well. So it's something to think about. Sometimes it is hard to go back afterwards and be like, okay, what I got to write all this down, and sometimes you just cannot get to it soon enough before it's out of your mind. I don't know if anyone else has that problem. I do. So I think there might be some ways to get some help with that, but I love all of your ideas, and it sounds like, again, you're using several different methods as well, so that's good to hear. And then I also wanted to acknowledge Nicole using a combination of facilitator observations and interviews. Excellent. Nicole, I don't know if you can chime in either through the chat or on the phone to talk just a little bit about how you're able to do interviews, because of there's usually such a time, it's such a large amount of time that you need for those. So I'd be curious to know a little bit more about your interviews if you'd like to share that.
Yeah, sure. So for the most part, a lot of it is the observations is kind of the majority. There are, I kind of do interviews with the students when I get a chance to really just kind of catch them, because a lot of times my groups meet during lunch, and so I don't, so it's usually if a student comes early or, leaves a little later, or if there's a particular event and, I have one-on-one interaction with one student, I really put some time and effort into making sure, like say, what did they like that we're doing? What do they think we can continue working on? So it's not so much a sit-down scheduled thing, just because of the system that, kind of the time frame that I get to see them. It's more of when I have the opportunity comes up, I try to check in with the students. So like I said, it's more of an more along the data gathering is the observation, but I do try to get interviews in there when possible.
I love it. Thanks for sharing, Nicole. I think that's a great way to do it. It's like being very opportunistic. Like when you see the opportunity, you take it, even if it's just snagging them in the hallway and saying, hey, talk to me about what you thought about this. I absolutely love that. And that's sometimes how we have to do that type of data collection.
Yeah. Well,
because
and I was going to say with the high schoolers, when I ask them questions and I have like them written down, they feel a little bit more intimidated, like it is an interview and there's a right and wrong answer. But if I just come at it where I have the questions in my head and I just have a conversation with them, they're a little bit more open and they feel less pressured.
That's a great point. Thank you for saying that. Thanks for sharing as well. And Joyce, you shared that you have a chance to do more observations and face-to-face interaction. Oh, you're talking about, is this your coworker that you're talking about? Okay. Oh, wait. Okay. For most of our presentations, we use questionnaires. Okay, Kristen, that's your prevention manager, is in a class setting, and she works alongside the teacher, and they do activities, observations. That's excellent. Okay. And recently started Big and Little Buddies with her high school students and kids from an elementary school nearby. And she can do more observations and face-to-face interaction because she sees them 3 times a week. As with the other school, we only see them once a week during the prep period. So there again is like that all important timing. How much time do you get to spend with the students, with the children that you're doing prevention programming with? And it sounds like you've got a couple of different ways that that's being done depending on the school. So that's really good to hear. Thank you for sharing that, Joyce. Is there anyone else who wants to share any type of data collection method that they're using, or even maybe struggling with or something? We are going to have a little time for some discussion and questions at the end, but I do want to just make sure if there's anyone else who wants to share that they have the opportunity to do that. Okay, well, it sounds that I don't hear anyone else coming on or seeing any chat, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this back over to Mo.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So I have like 5 screens open because I have all my notes and everything. This is really great to hear about what everybody's doing in terms of doing data collection and getting some of that information about the impact. It's funny because now that I'm not doing as much direct prevention work, I find that I miss a little bit the opportunity to try new things and Jen and I have been trying to build in as much as we can in the work that we're doing, like with the observation evaluation at NSAC. And it's so great to be able to try these things out and see what's working. And I think it helps us be able to talk with other people about like, oh, this is difficult, or oh, this is working really well, or how do you write these questions? So I really appreciate hearing from all of you. One of the things that we also wanted to talk about was measuring community change. I know you probably all know this, but you know, in the prevention field, as we've been going on, and we're not as much of a new field as we have been. We're getting a little older and getting a little more mature. There is this focus on really looking beyond just the individual and relationship level and trying to measure change that happens within communities throughout a community, and really seeing how can we measure that, how can we know that we're creating an impact there. And so I made this slide to maybe help us think a little bit about how we measure community change. And I'll just tell you right away, this is a trick question. These are two findings that someone could be maybe putting in an evaluation report or in a progress report. The first one says 85% of students surveyed reported a decrease in attitudes that support gender stereotypes. Okay, that sounds cool, right? All the students are probably in the same community. This is definitely an outcome that we would like to see from our prevention work. But is it measuring community change? I don't know. The next one says 85% of students surveyed stated that their school is a place where all students' identities are supported. That is a little bit of a different statement. Does anybody have a feeling about which one of these, if not both of them or neither of them, is measuring community change? You don't have to jump in, but you could put it in the chat, or you could just think about it. I'll give you the answer. Go to controls here. So when we're measuring community change, we don't necessarily want to just measure individuals within a community. I think sometimes, and I have definitely done this myself, I thought, okay, cool, I am doing community level change because I surveyed everybody in the community, and this is the stuff that we found out, and it's really great, and we're doing a good job. But, well, where's my control? Click on this here. Really, the example on the left is looking at a change in people's individual attitudes. So as you can see here, we did have 85% of the students who were surveyed in the same community, you know, they reported a decrease in attitudes that support gender stereotypes. But the key word here is attitudes. So we're really surveying people's individual attitudes, and that can lead to community-wide change, but it doesn't necessarily express that, and we might want to ask that question in a different way. So on the right, this is the one that really measures that school-wide climate. It's a similar statistic, right? 85% of the students who were surveyed, we're still using a survey, but they're stating information about their school as a whole, about their school community. They're saying that, you know, in their opinion, their school is a place where all students' identities are supported. And that really gets beyond people's individual attitudes or beliefs and really looks at the whole climate in the school. So there's a couple other ways that we can think about measuring this community change or looking at how this happens. So I have one example that I just want to tell you about really quick before we go into the slide example. In the New York City Alliance, they had this community vision. They just started really from the get-go working with an entire community. They started out using these data collection methods to do some needs assessments and readiness assessments. So even before they started thinking about how they're going to do prevention or what kind of prevention they're going to do, they did these assessments. They used participatory action research, which we could talk about a whole bunch at some point if you want to. But from the very beginning, what they did was they wanted to measure this community level change by using this group work. They just started from the very beginning, making sure that they were always looking at the community and not just the individual level change. So in terms of the slide, this is another example that I think can really help us see how this community change could happen and what it might look like in the kind of school setting that a lot of you are working in. So in this example, there are some students who are in a prevention group and they are learning all sorts of cool stuff. They took a look at their sexual harassment policy in their school, and they identified some gaps and some needs. There were some things that didn't quite sound right to them. So what they did was they met with other students, and they also met with school personnel to discuss possible changes. This is the kind of thing that could happen within their prevention group. If their prevention group meets at a certain time, they could bring in other people to the group to have time and space to talk about this kind of stuff, or they maybe just, did this on their own. And then the students really worked together to draft changes to the policy. This is the kind of thing that I could definitely see happening in lots of your prevention work, and the kind of thing that I actually have heard more prevention, and this is the kind of thing that our students are working on right now. And then what these students did was they discussed the update options with parents, with school personnel, with other students. They really just wanted to take a look and see what are the options of things that we can do. Bringing in other people who have input over those community level decisions. And then they proposed their policy, and the updated policy is approved. So in looking at how you could talk about this, there's all of these steps in which students are taking the lead. They are making these changes. They're gathering some data, drafting changes to the policy, and the updated policy being approved is something that you then could write about, and you could say, this is a community level change that has happened because of the work that all of these students have done. So that's just an example of how we can do that. And one of the things that I like to think about when I'm thinking about community level change is, these are, I guess, some of the key words that I think about. So I always think about policies and procedures. I'm a really big person into policies and procedures. I want to have like a policy for everything, because then I think it like institutionalizes stuff, and it means that then people will follow the rules. I don't know. I just like that idea. But also things like standards, climate, looking at environmental aspects, which it sounds like some of you are already doing in your work, but looking at like, how are the buildings set up? What are the hallways like? What are the passing periods and like between classes and that sort of thing? So all of those things have the opportunity to impact the entire community. So not just the folks who you're working with in your prevention group, but every single young person who goes to that school is going to be impacted by those things. Oh, before we go ahead to this activity, do folks have questions or comments about this example or any of this stuff about community level change? I'll just take a look at the chat box and see, or you can also unmute yourself. I never know how long to wait with webinars. I always think that people are just going to be like raring to go, like, I need to talk right now, but it sounds like maybe not for this. I'll just assume that you're all like, this is cool, it sounds good, we love community level change, and you're ready for an activity. So I'll just tell you now, this is a handout that was sent to you by Jessie. It's also in that hub. If you don't have it, you're gonna need it for this activity. We're actually gonna go over what you're gonna do, and then Jen and I are gonna give you a little bit of time to fill this out, either by yourself, or if you're on the webinar with your coworker, you can fill it out together. This is a little activity that I think can really help if you're looking at doing different data collection methods, to look at how it's actually gonna work in the work that you're doing. So go grab that. Let me look here and see what we're covering with this. So yeah, it's called Using Your Data Worksheet. I don't know why it doesn't look like that on here. Oh, there it is. Okay, so here's an example of what it will look like when it's all filled out? Oh yeah, Nicole, you want this emailed to you. So type in your email address. Okay, so I can definitely send this to you. While I'm waiting for you to type in your email address, let me just go over what this looks like. This is a form that comes from Wendy Siebold, who is an evaluation person that is pretty cool. She's super smart with all of her stuff. And what this asks you to do is look at what's being collected. So all the stuff that Jen went over with you, like the focus groups, interviews, observation, that kind of stuff, think about what kind of stuff is being collected. That's where you write that information. And then it takes you through a process where it asks you who's collecting the data, who is entering it online or into Excel. And if you take a look at this, you know, in our imaginary focus group, Jen and I are both taking notes because that will give us richer data, and we'll both code the answers, but I'm going to be the one who enters it into Excel. And then it asks who's summarizing the findings and what questions are you hoping to answer. So in our made-up example, I was thinking that I would summarize and then Jen would look it over. And we're really hoping to answer the top 5 needs for our community regarding prevention. Oh, Jen's going to send these. Thank you.
Oh, I'm trying to. I'm sorry. I'm having a problem. Oh, I think I found it. Sorry. I was having a problem accessing my email.
Oh, okay. I can do it too.
Got it. Nope, I got it.
Okay.
You keep going.
I will. I don't know how you all do things, but I tend to not like asking people to do things that I'm not willing to do myself. And so, you know, we did really want to fill this out so that you could see a completed version of this handout and hopefully be able to see like, okay, this is how it could really work for what I'm doing. The thing that I like about this handout is that it walks you through that whole process. So if you look about halfway down, the one that's in teal, that is asking who needs to see the findings and when will the findings be discussed. This takes us back to that initial information that Jen was talking about, like why do we want to gather this information at all? Who needs to see it? Why is it important to track this stuff? And in our answer, we said that, you know, the funder definitely needs to know because we have to send a 6-month report to them. We want to know because we want to know how things are going. We want to know what the community needs. And then we also included the program participants. I think whenever we're thinking about doing evaluation, it's always important to think about what the participants need, what the community needs. This is their data, it's their life, it's their information. So in some ways, I feel like we're just the stewards of that information, and it's on us to share that back with them and to help them use that information in the ways that they want. In the orange, it says final product. So this really helps us kind of figure out what we're going to be doing with these findings. So Jen and I said we're going to put it into a 6-month report, and we're also going to make it into a poster, and that's how we're going to share it back with the community. And so then based on your findings, how can your strategy be improved? That's the very last one. And, you know, we weren't sure how the strategy could be improved, but we were thinking that the focus group might give us information about how to shape the programming as well as the goals and outcomes. So this is the example for you. If you don't have the thing, Jen is sending it to you or has already sent it to you. It's also in the hub. And what we are hoping that you all can do is just take maybe 5 minutes, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. There's not a lot of people on the webinar. Just fill this out for one of the strategies, either something that you're already doing or maybe something that you want to incorporate doing. And then after you fill these out, we'll have a chance to share them with each other. If you want feedback on how you did, or if you just want to tell us all the cool answers that you came up with. Do folks have questions about this before we have a break for this activity? You can unmute your phones if you want to, or you can type in with the chat if you have any questions. Hopefully it's pretty straightforward. Okay, I don't see anything, so I will just assume that you all have your handout, that you are readily typing in all of your notes, And I think what I'm going to do is just mute myself, and we'll give you about 4 minutes to work on this, and then we'll check back in. And feel free to chime in at any point if you have questions, or also put stuff in the chat if you want to do that, and we can chat too. Okay, we'll take another couple minutes to fill out your data worksheet for one data collection method. If you get done early and want to share, feel free to type it in the chat, and then we can open it up for discussion too. It doesn't have to be perfect, and you're not going to get a grade on it. So the purpose of this really is just to have some time to think about what you're collecting, who's doing it, and why. So we'll check back in with you in just another minute or so. Okay, I'm curious to know how folks are doing. I wonder if you had a chance to fill out the whole worksheet or if you got through part of it. I'm also curious if anybody has one that they want to share or talk about, if you have any questions that came up, if this was helpful, if it was not helpful. I think if anybody is ready, we would love to hear from you. There's also no pressure, so if you don't feel like you came up with stuff that you want to share, that's fine too. But I think one of the things that makes these webinars pretty cool is when people are able to share information with each other. And in the past, we've had some pretty good luck with sometimes people will have a question and then somebody else will have an answer, or you all will end up talking with each other after Jen and I are all done and we leave. And I think that is nice because it creates this community of knowledge where you're kind of helping each other get better at what you're doing. So let's see. Oh, okay. So Sabrina says that you said that you're done and that your answers are pretty similar to the example. That's awesome. I think our answers are pretty good, but it makes me feel better that yours were similar. Does anybody have one that you want to share and maybe just talk us through what is being collected and all of the steps after that? You can chime in the chat box or you can unmute yourself. We have a little bit of time where we could explore one or two completed worksheets if you want to.
Okay, I unmuted myself, so hopefully everyone can hear me.
Thanks, Sabrina.
But, hi, yeah, no problem. So I want to preface this by saying I'm still very new and do not have a public health background, so a lot of this stuff kind of confuses me. But I basically just put for what is being collected, I just put pre and post evaluations. In terms of who is collecting the data and who is entering the data, that's all done by me. And then in terms of who is summarizing the findings, it's kind of me, but also a lot of our grant writing team is in charge of doing the reports, so I don't really have a huge part in that. But hopefully I will in the future as I have more of an understanding of it. And the questions we're hoping to answer is hoping to determine if attitudes were changed because of the program. Who needs to see these findings? Obviously we do, as well as the funders. But actually the answers in the example also made me realize that it would be really helpful for the teachers to be seeing that the program is making an impact. So that would be good. Yeah, and they'll be discussed in the 6-month report. And then final products, there's obviously the report summary, and then I really like the idea of making some type of flyer or at least something to share with the teachers so that they feel like it is worth their time to have us in the classroom. And then based on our findings, our strategy could be improved. Obviously the answers of the evaluation can help us figure out if we need to be asking more nuanced questions, if there is any one area that just everyone missed the mark on. Obviously we can go back and change our strategy for how we approach any particular topic to make sure that every student is really fully understanding the material next time.
Yeah, definitely. There's something about this kind of evaluation where you're collecting the information, and it's so good to not have it just for the report, but also to use to enhance your programming and make sure that you're hitting all the marks. And I think what you said was a really good example of, I've definitely seen it in the past where I think I've hit all the marks on something and then I get surveys back and go, oh, nobody understood this one piece. And then it's really useful to help tweak things for next time. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yes, definitely.
Were there any things when you were filling this out that made you feel like you have gaps or places where you're like, I don't really know, or anything like that? Now I'm totally putting you on the spot.
No, it's okay. I don't know. I guess I feel like I don't know that much about the reporting process just because the most recent report that was due didn't have to do with my findings from this past semester. They had to do with things that happened before I was hired on the job. So obviously I'm not the most well informed about what's going on. And then also, I guess this is kind of related, but just something that I noticed when I went up to Sacramento in November for the networking meeting is it seems like my program in Orange County is formatted very differently from a lot of the other RPE programs because mine is a lot more short term. I only work with the same group of students for like 5 days in their classroom, and then I never see those students again. Whereas it seems like a lot of the other programs, you know, they're working with the same student like once a week, multiple times a week throughout the entire school year. And so I'm just, I guess, trying to kind of apply everything that I've learned and try and make the most out of the very short amount of time that I have with students.
Yeah,
it's my only thing that I've been
sense.
kind of like that's like the only thing that I've been kind of like wrestling with since we had that meeting.
Yeah, that makes sense. I totally thought that you might say, or that somebody might be like, I'm the only person doing this. When I was doing prevention at the agency I worked at before going to NSCRC, I was the only person doing prevention, and it always, like, all of these questions ended up falling on me. It was like, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to collect the data, and I'm going to summarize it, and I'm going to write the report. And it was kind of exhausting. And so I guess my question was a little bit leading, but sometimes I feel like even filling this out can be super useful if you end up finding out that you're the only person. And it sounds like it's good because you're working with some folks who know about the funding process and are able to help with the reports and that sort of thing. But it is, I don't know, sometimes I think just spelling it out like this can sometimes make people go, oh, there's like a place here where I could use support as a preventionist, or a place where it might be helpful to work with somebody. Like Jen and I thankfully have each other that we now work with, but before it was just Jen, which she says was not as fun. So I totally agree. Not as fun. So thanks for sharing this.
Yeah, of course.
Really...
Sorry, you go.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think it's really helpful to be able to hear from you who, like, you know, all these other people that you're working with, and you went to the meeting in November, and my example was fake and yours is real. So I think it's good. It's good to have that.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely feel like this is definitely helpful to kind of help me map out who exactly I can get support from, because I do kind of agree with a lot of things that you were saying, in that I am the only one who is working on the RPE grant, so I am the only preventionist. And so I do feel a lot of the times like everything is kind of on me, and I have to figure out how to like do the program and then also collect data and then also enter it in afterwards and like do all that workshopping on my own. And so this is good for helping me identify, you know, exactly what needs to be collected from the funders and how I can kind of work that in and pay more. I don't know, I guess pay more, not that I wasn't paying attention before, but just write things down and realize how important they are to like telling the story of how the program is affecting students, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sometimes a lot of evaluation ends up happening after the fact, which is fine and is totally realistic, but yeah, I like sometimes having a thing that lays it out, which this kind of does. So I'm glad it's useful. Does anybody else have a thing that you want to share about this really quick? Any like questions that came up? I feel like your example, Sabrina, was so good. We don't necessarily need somebody else to do their whole thing, but if anybody has questions or insight that happened, insight from the form, I would say feel free to share that in the chat box or unmute yourself.
Hello, this is
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
So we have two RPE strategies that we're using, and for now we are using a outcome from our close to home project, and it's kind of like broad a little bit. So maybe you guys can help us a little bit with exploring different evaluation tools. But our outcome is increase in community ownership of sexual assault prevention. Our content is basically table conversations that we discussed earlier, and kitchen table conversations, community actions, interviews like you guys talked about, one-to-one interviews, and then our content matches, right?
Yeah.
And basically the evaluation tool that we have and that we use is needs assessment, observing and taking notes. Yeah. So it's kind of like broad, or
it does sound really broad. I mean, because you're looking to increase community ownership, and so like, what does that even mean? And how do people, the thing I'm thinking about is like, how do you know if people feel like they have ownership? Like, is it a thing that people will tell you, or is it a thing that people will say? That's the place where I'm kind of honing in on like, oh, that's really interesting, because I think that's the kind of thing that people maybe would tell you, or maybe there are key things they would say, or things that you would notice. What do you think, Jen? I'm just realizing I'm doing lots of talking and Jen is not.
Yeah, I feel the same. I feel like that's something that's really hard to capture, that community ownership. But I like Mo's idea of like, as you're having the conversations, maybe there are key phrases or key words that you're looking for around the community engagement and involvement. I don't know exactly what that would look like for your particular community, but it could be something like where you have an observational checklist that you're going through as you have the conversations and you hear the things that you're looking for.
Yeah. So something that comes to mind as I hear you guys speak is like, what does that even mean? And for me, it makes me, we don't have it listed out on our logic model, but pretty much is, for the adults that we work with, community members, not students, like let's just talk about adults for now, understanding risk protective factors. That is an outcome.
Oh,
correct?
Yeah. So you could count if they like use those terms, or if they bring them up when you're having a conversation.
Okay.
Or could you do, is there any way to do any type of activity-based thing where you, even if it's a worksheet or something, where you have them do matching, or I don't know, something creative that would be fun and short and it wouldn't take up too much time, but that there would be some type of activity involved in identifying the risk and protective factors, or figuring out which is which, or that sort of thing. That might be something that you could incorporate.
Awesome. Yeah, that's something that I'm looking forward to incorporating, actually. Is there any tools that you share?
There's one more thing I was thinking about, and this is just me kind of thinking out loud. I don't know if you can hear a dog barking in the background, but it's my dog, and she's being so annoying. So I'm sorry about that if you can hear a dog. One of the things I was thinking of is like, if your goal is to increase this community ownership, I wonder if you could even just ask people in the very beginning, maybe the first time you're meeting them or the first time you're talking, like, you could say, one of our goals is community ownership. What would that mean if you took ownership of this? Would it mean that you would do it without me even assisting you, or you would do it all on your own even next year? Or if you could find out from the folks you're working with what that looks like to them, then you might be able to incorporate those things into your measurement tools to see if they're happening, but they would be generated by the folks that you're working with, if that makes sense.
Got it. That makes perfect sense. That was helpful. Thank you so much.
I was thinking,
it sounds
like, ways
really
that
exciting.
I was thinking about like ways that you could identify, like, I don't know, is there a point in the conversation, if this is like say a weekly meeting, weekly gathering, that they kind of identify, here's some ways that I can become engaged and active in my community around this and taking leadership and ownership of it. I'm going to identify like 3 things that I can do, and then like the next week they come back, like each week they kind of have an opportunity to report on something that they did to take that ownership or take that leadership, or And then that could be like, oh, okay, that could again be another checklist type thing of how many people actually like had some type of actionable item, activity, something that they did in their community to support the goals that the group has. So that's just an idea as well.
Got it. Thank you so much.
You're
I
welcome.
love talking about this stuff. This is so fun. I'm never on webinars where people talk to each other, and so I like this webinar. This is good. We're doing a good webinar, everybody. I think this is great. So I'm just going to move ahead our slides because we did our activity. Good job, activity. We have just a few more minutes left, and we want to make sure that we have enough time to have a little bit of discussion. So I think, Jen, this is like your part of the thing, but we could both talk about it.
Sure.
We were really wondering what questions you all have and what other information you might want, and what do you want to talk about with our time together?
And this could also be something you want to know now, or like if it's something that you want us to talk more about when we come to visit you all in January, or if you want us to bring resources for you so we can talk more in depth. It could be something you want an answer to right now, or something that you would like to, because we're going to be planning with Jesse what our time is going to look like. So it'd be great to have any feedback you have for us, or something more in depth we can do for you all when we have the opportunity to see you in person. So either way.
Yeah, this is a great time to give feedback for January. And I also just want to give some information, and something that might be helpful also to think about is that when we met in our November meeting, one of our exciting announcements from Nancy Bagnato from CDPH is that they have decided to do a contract extension, so everyone will have another year of funding before the funding goes competitive again. So that's a pretty big deal. And then nobody has gotten any, information on what will the scope of work look like. Do you just do similar stuff or what? But one thing that she did say is that, they really want people to be thinking about how they stretch in those community level change ways. How do they stretch from the school, from the activities they're doing at school to include the community in those community level changes. So everybody who was there knows what I'm talking about. And so it's just, thinking about that, and thinking about, if you're doing more of the more individual curriculum, it may be something, and I'm not trying to, I don't want to totally dictate, but have you been thinking about how you might do that? Do you want ideas about that? How other places are doing it? I don't know, just a thought.
So Lolly says, what I would like more help with is is developing questions to measure impact. Oh, that's excellent.
That's a good
really
one,
good,
yeah. And there's some good resources out there also, I think.
And then Joyce says, for being new and noticing that there are many new staff in Sacramento, many of us were interested in short activities we could use with students, icebreakers, or to get them more involved. This would be good to have at the training in January. Oh, you have come to the right place, Joyce, because Mo is
we love icebreakers.
Genius. I love icebreakers, but I think, Mo, you have you have a monopoly on icebreakers because you have so many good ideas. So I think we could definitely do that.
I use those candy question icebreaker all the time now, except at the County of San Diego where it's all about healthy eating, so I have to use fruit leathers instead of candy.
we have lots of icebreaker ideas for you, Joyce, and Lolly. I think that again, there is some information and resources we'd be happy to also share about more in depth around developing questions that will really help you measure the impact and won't just be. One thing that I like to do is I like to look through people's surveys and say, why are you asking this? And if you don't have a really good reason of why you're asking something, or you don't use the data, throw out that question. And it really helps people narrow down. Like sometimes people have 2-page surveys and nobody's going to answer that. Nobody wants to have to go through that. So we can really help you, I think, figure out what the questions are. It might be nice to actually see some of the surveys, not to be like judgmental, but trust me, I still make surveys that I come back with all the data and I'm like, why did they even ask that question? I don't even know why. But we could have sort of a looking at surveys, either your own surveys, or we could put up some sample surveys and we could work through them together to help us word questions better, to help us eliminate asking questions that we're not really going to use the information. So I think there's lots of ways we can help with that. So these are really, really good questions.
Those are good questions. I'm going to advance the slide just because I want to say, oh, you said you'll bring in the surveys? Awesome.
Yay.
Okay. I think some of you, I think Lolly, you definitely will remember this because I remember you were at that training. And for those of you who are newer and were not at the training that Jen and I did at the very beginning of the year, we used this tool called the content crosswalk that also comes from Wendy Siebold, and it was like the biggest hit. It was the bigger hit than the icebreakers that we did and the candy that we brought. Everybody loved the content crosswalk because what it allowed folks to do was look at the outcomes from your logic model, incorporate the content, so like the strategies or activities that you would be doing for your prevention stuff, and then you can look and see if they match. The other part of the content crosswalk that we didn't talk about a lot, but I wanted to point out today because it might be useful for you going forward, is that it also has a spot on the right for the evaluation tool. And so this is a way that you can really look at what your outcomes are, what you're telling your funders that you're going to be doing, what you have in your logic model, what you have in your RPE requirements, being able to look at the strategies and activities that you're doing, and then see if you actually have an evaluation tool that is related to that. And like Jen was saying before, maybe you have like 5 evaluation tools that are measuring one strategy, and then you could kind of whittle those down. But oftentimes, even in my own work, I've found that I'm doing a strategy or activity and it matches my logic model and it's real cool, and then I am never evaluating it. So this might be a thing if you're interested in homework, or if you're interested in just putting your stuff out on a little form to see how it matches up. This content crosswalk might be a really great thing to use. And that's on the hub as well, and we can also send you another copy of it too.
Are there any other
something
questions?
That maybe if somebody wanted to, if somebody did the content crosswalk, that maybe if they'd be willing to share, could be kind of workshops so that other people could see how it's valuable. Just ideas.
Yeah, definitely.
So it looks like we're at our, sorry, go ahead. What was the, repeat what question?
Oh, the one that you guys just asked us about ideas.
Oh, we were just saying if there's any other questions or ideas of things that you might want to expand upon when we come in January. So we already have some information about, we want some survey questions that measure impact. We want to look at icebreakers or activities we can use with students and getting them involved. There's a couple other things. If there's anything else that you have that you want from us, any more information, we'd be happy to hear that now. I know we are at time though, so I just want to be respectful of time, so maybe just like 30 more seconds.
I do have one additional thing, because I work with the passive, so we have 2 under the 2 different RPE grants. You know, Aracelis working more with like the families and the youth, and I'm over here in Pasadena working with the schools. And yeah, like the whole thing with the icebreakers, like I feel like I would really benefit from that, because have very limited time with the youth sometimes, and we'll have like administration who will look at us and be like, we don't have time to do the check-ins, like it's taking up too much time and we're not getting into the curriculum. So I want to figure out creative ways to, like, you know, maybe have more icebreakers that to get us started with the curriculum, and like figuring out just you know, picking your brain about that and what we can incorporate in the classroom to you know, with groups that might be it's just difficult to get through, like when we have a group of like 30 students and giving everybody the time to, like, you know, to speak, and when we have a limited amount of time. So it's just a challenge for us at this point in Pasadena.
Yeah, that's a great question. It is a challenge, and I'm writing this down so we don't forget it. So thank you for that suggestion as well. I think we'll be able to come up with some things to share with you as well.
Thank you.
So I think we are at the end, it looks like. I think this was really, really helpful for me. I hope it was for all of you. You know, we really appreciate all of your participation, and it really has me even more excited than I was about coming back out there in January. And I think Mo and Jesse and I will have some very, very good conversation over the next couple of weeks as we start to plan what that visit will look like. Mo, do you have anything to add?
No, it's going to be so fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
Folks on the call, if you have feedback you think of later, just email it to me.
Yeah, this will be awesome. Thanks everybody for being on this webinar, and thanks for being so participatory. I think that was it made it really fun, and it felt like we're all talking together instead of just talking at you, which sometimes it feels like that. So yeah, thanks.
And thank you, Jen and Mo, for being willing to do a do-over today so we could get a nice recording of it, and everyone for participating today.
Thank you.
If you didn't get registration email for January, please let me know so that I can make sure and send it again.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone. Okay, Jesse, I will send you some dates and times for Mo and I next week.
Okay, that sounds
all right.
great. Thank you